And welcome back, everyone. We are ready for our next speaker. We have Julie Nováková. She is an evolutionary and theoretical biologist at the Institute of Physics of the Czech Academy of Sciences, but she is also a science fiction author, editor, and science communicator. So please, Julie, whenever you are ready, feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Helena. I'm so happy to be here. And it's my honor to talk after Susan, because when I started my biology studies some 15 years ago, I read The Meme Machine and I loved it very much. And actually, right now, I feel like I should be talking rather about the theme of my PhD thesis that I submitted earlier today, which is about the evolution of altruism. But my talk is about something different because, as Helena said, apart from being an evolutionary and theoretical biologist, I do lots of science outreach. I'm active in astrobiology, and I'm a science fiction writer and editor interested in science art in general. And my talk will be about exoplanets in art and science fiction in a few projects that are close to what I do or that I took part in. And let's start with saying that using science fiction for outreach is not a new idea. Some of you might recognize this man. It's Herbert George Wells, a prolific science fiction writer and also a biology and chemistry teacher who liked to envisage how alien life might look or how it might go if it ever met with Earth life. And in a Nature column at the end of the 19th century, he talked about using literature for popularizing science, or rather taking inspiration from popular literature like Edgar Allan Poe's mysteries in writing about science for the public, to really engage in the process of the ingenious unraveling of evidence, as he called it. And this is something that we are doing today, because we can see that science fiction has been a source of inspiration for many people. Here is some data about from astronomers from a French astronomy conference collected by Boissier last year. And that's the data in blue columns. And the red stars show the same data from Elizabeth Stanway from British astronomers. And on the left, we have adoration, meaning how much the astronomers at the conference liked science fiction. And the higher number, the more they liked it. We can see that especially British astronomers really love their science fiction, but it's also true of their French counterparts. And on the right side, we see the influence, meaning how did reading science fiction or potentially watching science fiction or listening to it influence their decision to go into science, to become astronomers. And here we see more difference between the French and the British. In the British, we can see quite a lot of influence. In the French, it's slightly different. But it's clear that it has been some source of inspiration. So it's a good gateway for people to learn more about science, about space, including exoplanets, which are the main topic today. So let's dive into how science fiction tackles the topics of exoplanets. Of course, planets around other stars were present in science fiction ever since the beginning of the modern era of the genre. But up until recently, there weren't really any attempts to see how the science fictional depictions reflected the actual scientific discoveries. And recently, there were several papers by Emma Johanna Puranen and her colleagues. And the most interesting one, I think, is about science fiction media representations of exoplanets. They collected several hundred imaginations of exoplanets in various science fictional sources across media, not just novels and stories, but also TV series, movies, games, etc., and looked how they changed in time and how they changed across the media. And basically, ever since the beginning of the 90s, after the first confirmed exoplanet discoveries, the depictions became increasingly more realistic, more diverse, showing not just planets like our Earth, but also more gas giants and more, let's say, exotic planets, reflecting the wonderful diversity of exoplanets that have been discovered up until now in the over 5,000 confirmed exoplanets so far. And Emma is also the editor of a 2021 book around distant stars, which tackles exoplanets from the science fictional viewpoint, which I can heartily recommend. And it's not the only example of science fiction used to do outreach in the field of exoplanet science. In November 2020, there was the Exoplanet Demographics meeting, and Jesse Christiansen and Heather Clitheroe prepared several e-zines to convey these scientific topics presented at the conference to the general public audience in the form of very short stories, but also poems, images, and more. Again, it's a really good educational and inspirational resource. And we can see that ever since the beginning of science fiction, there have been dreams of going further into space and dreams of how it might look around other stars. On the left, we have Beyond the Planet Earth by Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, the father of rocket science, but also a science fiction writer. And there have been plenty of let's say, not just imaginative in the way of the story, but scientifically imaginative science fiction novels and short stories ever since. This is just a really, really brief example of some of them. And what we did at the European Astrobiology Institute were especially these two anthologies, which merge science fiction with popular science essays. The first of them, Strangest of All, was released in early 2020. So if I went chronologically, I should have talked about that before the Exodem e-zines and before Around Distant Stars. This was published in May 2020 in one of the first waves of COVID, when there was no opportunity of in-person science outreach, and many schools were closed because of the need to limit the transmission of the virus. So we released this book that we have been preparing before as a free ebook for people to read during lockdowns, and to learn more about not just exoplanet science, but astrobiology in general from their homes. And the stories feature topics from subsurface oceans on planets and moons around other stars, but vaguely similar to the subsurface oceans that we know are present on moons like Europa, Enceladus, Titan, and more, all the way to SETI and the Drake equation that Susan talked about. And it remains free to download on the website of the European Astrobiology Institute, so anyone can read it in any of the formats that are available there. And since it was downloaded many thousands of times and it had pretty good reviews, we decided to continue in this project with a more ambitious anthology, Life Beyond Us. Because in Strangest of All, we had reprint stories, meaning previously published. And after each story, I wrote a short popular science article about the topic presented in the story, be it the subsurface oceans or exotic photosynthesis, SETI, and more. And in Life Beyond Us, we had original stories by 27 authors around the world, including Peter Watts, whose novel Blind Side really reminded me of the meme machine when I read it. So I don't know if Susan and Peter know each other, but the novel echoes the earlier published meme machine quite well, and also presents a science fictional way of popularizing the science that Susan wrote about. And uh, the topics, again, were quite varied, and lots of them included exoplanets. And to follow up on Susan's previous talk, some of these stories also tackled the idea of planets and biospheres being considered as evolutionary units in themselves as replicators. It's not a new idea. It's been here ever since Jim Lovelock and the Gaia hypothesis. And here we can see science fictional takes on the clashes of biospheres and how life might spread from one planet to another, either unwittingly through lithopanspermia and other means, or consciously with spaceships and people and so on. And it's important to think about these things because as we venture more into space, we will increasingly meet with not just scientific, but also ethical questions of space exploration and questions that border on the ethics and science, for instance, planetary protection, especially relevant now in case of Mars, which, as far as we know, had habitable environments in the past, had liquid water for a quite long time, and had all the conditions that we think are necessary for the origin of life. Whether life actually was present there at some time, we are not sure. So we are sending probes like the currently present Perseverance or the upcoming rover by ESA Rosalind Franklin to learn more about that. And if people land on Mars, it hampers planetary protection quite a lot because we are walking bags of microbes which are impossible to sterilize and impossible to completely scrub in airlocks. So if humans land on Mars, we will inevitably introduce some Earth-based microorganisms on the red planet. And if they find some underground environment where they would be able to survive, then it might be a big problem for the search for life and an even bigger problem for a potential local Martian biosphere, if there is any. So again, under the current situation with talks about humans going to Mars as a new priority, this is an ethical / scientific question that we should be considering more and more. And in the future, questions like that might become relevant even for exoplanets if we're talking very far future. So this was the science fiction / science outreach project that we did at the European Astrobiology Institute, and we hope to do more of that. And you can see the beautiful cover art by Dan O'Driscoll showing the James Webb Space Telescope reflecting potential forms of life inspired by the drawings of the evolutionary biologist Ernst Haeckel. And inspiration from science and science art is another thing I would like to mention in the brief rest of my talk, because at the Institute of Physics, where I do science outreach and education. We ran an exhibition called Reflections last year, which tackled the topic of exoplanets in a more distant way by featuring, here you can see on the left, this painting by a Polish painter, Łukasz Huculak, which is called Terraforma, and it's meant to convey a sense of an alien planet that humans might want to settle and terraform, but at what cost and with what consequences. And from each of the paintings, including this one, a small and the artists were presented with the results of this analysis under the microscope, and it served as an inspiration for them to create more works inspired by these analyses, which you can see on the middle image from the opening of the exhibition. In the background, there's always the main painting, the main image, and then the inspirations from the microscopy images. So we definitely hope to do more such events in the future because it's a way for art to be more closely drawn to science and more closely inspired, but also a way of showing that the inspiration flows both ways, that science is continually inspired by art and it analyzes art and can even sometimes constitute art in itself. So there's definitely more projects coming up. Some of them will happen at the biennial astrobiology conference in July, taking place in Iceland, which I invite everyone interested in astrobiology to. And before that, there is also the Falcon meeting of early career scientists and students, organized partly by EANA. And we definitely have lots of future plans concerning bioart and speculative art about the depictions and representations of alien life and exoplanets in science fiction, and lots more projects. We have one grant submitted that might be helpful for this. I can't really talk about it in detail because it's currently under review and we don't know the results yet. But if it's successful, there definitely will be more opportunities of art-science collaborations. So please stay tuned. And we definitely welcome also meme artists because, as the exhibition shows, memes can be an art form in itself and can serve educational purposes, same as science fiction stories and novels. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, just drop them in the YouTube chat and I will answer them there as well. So thank you, Helena, Sven, and Peter for inviting me. And I hope that this has been helpful and inspirational in some way for the audience. So have a great day and a great rest of the exhibition.
Perfect. Julie, thank you so much for this fascinating talk. We hope we can all attend Beacon and also maybe that we can organize another event like we did with Iana so that we can get many more memes. So the part of the event that is about talks is now done. So we are currently just finishing counting out the votes so that we can share with you which ones are the winners for this year. So please just bear with me for a couple of minutes while we get everything ready so that we can share the winners with you.